If you're a high-achieving woman who's exhausted by stress, stuck in constant conflict, and tired of being overlooked in the exact rooms where you know you were born to lead, then this podcast is for you. So here's your host, Pallavi Jain.
Welcome back to Her Boss Brain. I'm Pallavi Jain, and this is the space where we bridge human behavior, inner science, and workplace performance because success today is not only about what we know, but how we actually apply that in real situations and operate under pressure. Together, we explore how to activate your boss brain and lead from within in the moments that matter the most. One of the most common questions I get from leaders, managers, and even employees themselves is why don't people take accountability anymore? Or sometimes it sounds like my employees don't take ownership, my managers avoid responsibility, my team only brings problems, not solutions. And honestly, if you have worked in today's workplaces, you've probably experienced this yourself. You ask for an update in a meeting and suddenly the room goes quiet. Someone says, well, I thought another team was handling it. And another person says, I was waiting for approval. Someone else says, well, nobody told me. And as a leader, you're sitting there thinking, why does nobody take ownership anymore? So I wanted to spend a full episode today talking about this because accountability is one of the biggest workplace challenges organizations are dealing with right now. But here's what I want us to understand: accountability is not just a behavior issue. Most of the time, it is a pressure issue, a nervous system issue, a capacity issue. And unless we understand what is happening underneath human behavior, we will keep trying to fix accountability at the surface level while missing the real root cause. I often explain this like, driving through dense fog. When visibility is clear, we naturally make better decisions. We can see the road ahead, we respond calmly, we adjust intentionally. But when fog suddenly appears, even skilled drivers become uncertain because visibility narrows. Their reaction time, right, is escalated. Confidence drops. And even small obstacles start feeling bigger than they are. And many workplaces today are functioning in that kind of mental and emotional fog. There is constant pressure, constant ambiguity, stimulation. So, what we call lack of accountability is often people losing clarity and reacting from overwhelm instead of operating from intentional control. And Lead from Within helps people clear that internal fog so they can think clearly, respond intentionally, and stay in charge of themselves, even under pressure. These constant day to day matters that come in front of us, right? The thing is, accountability and ownership are not straightforward issues. They are underlying factors that quietly shape how people respond under everyday pressure and the change, right? And the first thing we need to recognize is this: if we ourselves are overwhelmed, lacking inner clarity, mentally exhausted, right? We're emotionally overloaded, constantly feeling like there is never enough time, while we're moving from back to back meetings to emails to team messages to performance pressure to personal responsibilities, then our internal capacity starts shrinking. And when human beings lose inner capacity, our perception narrows, our emotional reactivity increases, and we stop responding intentionally. Instead of, taking ownership, accountability, that solution focused thinking that we want, and intentional communication, we start seeing blame, defensiveness, avoidance, and complaining, and many times shutting down, not because people are bad, but because overwhelmed humans struggle to think clearly. And the problem becomes much bigger when entire teams are functioning this way every single day. Now, meetings become spaces where everyone is reporting problems, but nobody has the emotional bandwidth to actually think about solutions. And this is exactly what I see when I work with high achievers, leaders, and teams. At the surface level, organizations think they have an accountability problem. But what we often discover is that people are cognitively overloaded. They're constantly reacting. They are functioning in this chronic stress mode. Sometimes people lack that accountability because they are overwhelmed. But other times they have simply stopped feeling connected, motivated, or invested. Both situations matter. But in either case, the deeper question becomes, what is shaping the way people are thinking, feeling, perceiving, and responding at work every day? Let me give you an example. Imagine an employee who misses an important deadline, okay? And now from the outside, it looks like lack of accountability. But what may have actually happened internally, maybe they were juggling five competing priorities. Maybe they were unclear which task mattered most. Maybe they were afraid to admit that they were behind. Maybe they kept hoping that they would catch up before anyone noticed. Or maybe they were just mentally exhausted. So instead of proactively communicating early, avoid messages, delay responses, and become defensive when they were questioned, this is what happens when pressure overwhelms clarity. And I think this is important because sometimes we reduce accountability to character flaws, when in reality, many people are operating from overwhelm, pressure, and reduced clarity. Now let's look at the leadership side, right? Sometimes leaders say, my team never takes ownership. But if we truly look honestly at the environment, we may notice, I'm not saying this will happen all the time, but we may notice that it's because the priorities are constantly changing. There is inconsistency in the responses from leadership. Sometimes they're holding them accountable, sometimes they're not. It's just ambiguity a lot of how a leader is operating in those situations. Then sometimes there is emotional reactions during mistakes. There's fear-based communication, and meetings are focused more on blame than solution. And over time, teams learn something very quickly. It feels psychologically safer to deflect responsibility than to speak openly. And this is why inner capacity and clarity of leader matter so much. Because teams mirror leadership patterns. So if leaders are reactive, they are emotionally inconsistent, they are unclear, they're overwhelmed themselves, then teams absorb that energy. Whereas when leaders stay grounded, when they are solution focused, when they know where they're going, they're emotionally regulated, and they're consistent even under pressure, teams gradually begin responding the same way. And this becomes even more important in today's world because we are operating in unprecedented levels of ambiguity and acceleration. Start from AI disruption, there is constant change. A lot of organizations are going through reorgs, there is performance pressure. Fear of irrelevance is real, and information overload, of course. Now, all of this is placing enormous pressure on the human nervous system at every level. And here's the critical gap I believe exists in workplaces today. We have trained people in conflict resolution, communication, decision making, how to take effective feedback, change management. But tell me honestly, when the real moment happens, how many of us are actually able to apply those concepts in real time, right? And how many of us later replay the situation and think, what happened to me in that moment? Why did I react like that? Why did I panic? Why did I shut down? And you regret something that you said. This happens because when pressure rises, our automatic reactions begin driving behavior more than our intentional thinking. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for intentional decision making, emotional regulation, problem solving, it becomes less effective under the stress and emotional overload. And that is why intelligent and capable people can suddenly become confused, reactive, unclear, they zone out, or they become emotionally defensive under these moments. And this is why accountability often breaks down under these pressure situations. Because accountability requires that clarity, ownership, intentional thinking, and that problem solving capacity. And this is the missing link that Leap from Within is designed to address. What most organizations are missing is not more information, no more content and theory. It is helping people learn how to operate in these real moments when pressure hits, when change happens. Not after the conflict, not after the regret, not after the emotional reaction, not after that internal chaos, but in the actual moment when stress, ambiguity, pressure, and emotion hit. And that is where transformation really happens. And that's why the ATM framework is so powerful. When you A, arrive in the present moment, T, take responsibility, M, make a conscious choice. When people learn how to apply this in real moments, they begin activating their boss brain, their ability to be on self start, to be in charge of themselves even under these pressure situations. Instead of reacting automatically from pressure and emotional overload, they learn to pause, regulate, think clearly, communicate intentionally, take ownership, and move towards solutions. They are back in control, right? And this changes everything. Now, this pressure can show up in various ways, in small little things that happen, because it's almost like these small little things are creating this overload. So, when I'm talking about pressure, I'm not talking about just critical situations, just everyday things that happen. They just keep activating and stimulating our nervous system. And that is why, when we get back that control, when people regain clarity and intentional control, they create momentum. Decision making improves, communication improves, execution improves. People stop waiting passively for circumstances to change and get better, and they start responding more consciously to what is in front of them in that moment. Accountability becomes easier when the nervous system feels safe, clear, and capable. Another important insight here is that the research on high performing teams, including work done through Google, consistently found that psychological safety plays a major role in team effectiveness. When people feel safe, communicating problems early, accountability increases. When people fear blame, judgment, right, or emotional punishment, they hide mistakes longer. And this is where organizations need a deeper conversation. Because accountability is not built through fear, it is built through internal capacity, clarity, and conscious leadership. And the important thing here is this: accountability is not actually difficult to rebuild in teams when the right environment and internal capacity are created. Ownership becomes contagious when it is consistently modeled, recognized, celebrated, and reinforced. When people feel clear, empowered, safe, solution focused, they naturally begin stepping forward more proactively. That momentum starts shaping team culture very quickly. And I also want to speak directly to my individual contributors who are listening today for a moment, because this conversation is not only for leaders. If you're someone early or mid career, here's something important to understand. The future of work is no longer only rewarding technical skills or degrees or certifications. Organizations increasingly value people who can stay calm under pressure, who can communicate effectively and proactively, who can adapt quickly, think critically, solve problems, and take initiative. Bring solutions instead of only escalating problems, right? This is what signals leadership readiness today. One of the fastest ways to stand out professionally is becoming someone who stays solution focused even in these real moments under pressure, under change. Before escalating a problem, ask yourself, what exactly is the issue? What have I already tried? And what support or decision do I actually need? Even this small shift immediately demonstrates ownership, clarity, and initiative, and leaders notice this very quickly. And now for my leaders and managers. Here is one practical tool you can apply immediately with your teams. So before your next meeting, ask team members to reflect on three questions beforehand. What is the actual issue? What is within our control? What possible solutions or next steps can we explore? And then you begin the meeting using the ATM framework. First, arrive in the present. Pause your own reactive energy before the discussion begins. Be there. Second, take responsibility and be clear on what truly matters for this meeting. You have to own, right? What is it that matters? And you got to focus on that and then focus on contribution and solutions rather than blame. And then do the third step: make a conscious choice. Help your team decide intentionally how the team wants to move forward together. This small shift and anchoring for yourself can completely change the emotional quality and effectiveness of team conversations. And this is why I believe Lead from Within is not simply a leadership development tool. It is the missing human operating system organizations need today at every level. Because underneath almost every workplace challenge we talk about, right, whether it's accountability, communication, burnout, collaboration, decision making, performance, or leadership effectiveness, there is one common thread: human beings trying to function under constant pressure without the real tools to regulate, adapt, communicate, decide, and respond consciously. And this gap exists at every level, from frontline employees to managers to executives to boardrooms. And when organizations fill this gap, the impact extends everywhere. Your accountability improves, communication improves, there is better collaboration within teams, decision making is more clear, performance improves. Because now people are no longer operating purely on autopilot reactions. They are operating with awareness, clarity, emotional regulation, intentionality, and most importantly, self agency. They understand how their inner technology influences their own perception, their own behavior, communication, and decision making. And they know how to consciously regain control, the most important point when those situations happen. And I truly believe this is one of the most important skills for the future of work. Because the future of work will not only belong to the smartest people, it will belong to the people who can stay clear in ambiguity, who can perform under those pressure situations, adapt quickly through change, and they're intentional in how they lead themselves and others around them. Because when people learn how to operate from an activated boss brain state, accountability, ownership, and performance stop feeling forced. They become natural outcomes of people who are truly in charge of themselves. And that is exactly what it means to lead from within. Hope this conversation shifted something within you. And I would love for you to apply the small practices you can apply in your meetings as an individual contributor or as a manager. And keep sharing your feedback and questions. I love them. I will see you next week.
So that's it for today's episode of our Boss Brain podcast. Head on over to Apple Podcasts, iTunes, or wherever you listen and subscribe to the show. One lucky listener every single week that posts a review on Apple Podcasts or iTunes will win a chance in a grand prize drawing to win a $25,000 private VIP day with Pallavi herself. Be sure to head on over to her bossbrainpodcast.com and pick up a free copy of Pallavi's gift and join us next time.